Thanks for joining. I thought I'd kind of share first, before we get to any questions, I wanted to share kind of what's going on for me. And, just kind of talk about where things stand. And the first thing, of course, is this Music Academy. Finally got things launched. It's up and running. I'm kind of late to the 21st century, I guess, internet age, and there's several reasons for that. But I finally have kind of sucked it up and decided, okay, let's go ahead and do this. Oh, by the way, yeah, I see some questions here coming up. Yeah, we'll get to those questions. Just hold off on them for a bit, though, because if too many questions come through, then I'm not going to necessarily be able to scroll back to them or whatever. But here, I want to talk just a little bit first about my perspective and what I'm doing with it now. So the Music Academy, online Music Academy, is finally going, and it's lots of more modules and courses are going up here. And I want to talk in particular about the next one that's in the works right now. But I guess first I wanted to mention that the reason that it's just now going is because, education for me and writing these books, that was a vehicle, an opportunity that happened at the time and kind of got me into that side of things. It wasn't ever my sole focus, and it wasn't, my dream either, in the when I was a kid and I was in bands, teenager, I really had two goals. I loved music, and I wanted to play music, and I wanted to play it well. And I had ideas in my head. I would hear ideas. Now, not all those ideas early on were real solid, but they might be a feel, an attitude. I might, hear. It might be, a riff or something. But early on, I wanted to be able to translate those ideas instantly from my head to the guitar. And what I found was that if I didn't get it out fast enough, I'd lose it. So I knew that I needed to connect. I knew I needed to know what things sounded like on the fretboard so that I could stay in the moment and keep creating. And of course, on the technique side, energy inspired me, fast playing, precise playing, and so I wanted to be able to play, anything at any speed. I didn't want to be limited by the mechanics. So those were the two separate goals, the physical goal on the one side, which kind of was addressed in Speed Mechanics, the original Speed Mechanics for lead guitar, that guy over there. And then, of course, this connection to be able to have clear ideas in your mind, or clarify the ideas that are in your mind and get them out quickly enough on the guitar so you don't lose them. That can take the form of improvisation, where you literally do it in the moment. It can also take the form, though, of just listening to a bed track and imagining what sounds good. And that's how I composed all that early stuff. Like last time we did this live stream, people were asking about that, the Rain Song solo. It's a pretty long, extended outro solo, and it's still probably my favorite of any solos that I've done. That one kind of stands out to me as kind of a real inspired. It just worked. And at that time, how I was creating those sorts of things was I would just listen to that track. I had a little 4-track tape recorder. And so I had drums recorded on one track. I had a clean electric on one track. I had a bass guitar. That was the bed track for that outro solo. And then I had a 4th track, and that was my, I was recording the lead. So what I'd do is I'd listen, and hear what does that sound, what is that song calling for? What does that feel? What do I want to hear? You know, what would be good? And so I listen and I would hear some ideas. I'd play those ideas. And I usually do it basically a phrase at a time. You know, maybe four measures, you know, kind of hear where it wanted to go. And then I would track that. I wouldn't think about what's coming after. So it's kind of improvised, but it's not totally improvised. And then I do the next one, and then record it, the next one, and I'd string it all together. Now that's a demo. After I got that and I was satisfied with it, you know, because sometimes I might try it and I'd listen and I would like, oh, I don't really like the way that's going. I'd do it. I'd do that phrase again. And I might improvise and see what came out. Might like some of it, didn't, you know, so I'd do that. And then I'd come back and you know, actually then learn it and record it. At that point, it's a composed solo. But in any case, it's still coming from up here, the same way improvised music would. But those were my two goals. And the whole teaching thing was just a sideline for me. You know, I could pull that, my journey, whatever it was, and connect it and then write these books. The books did well. I was always still in bands, still writing music, and that was still, in my mind, that was my main focus. And so I perceived myself as a recording artist, as a musician. I just didn't have any successful bands. And but I stayed with all of it. And so it was teaching was always a part-time thing, writing books, you know, basically part-time. Well, the other thing is that I was always interested in content and doing good work, whatever the work was, whether it was writing songs or it was an instructional thing. So I did the work, and I was never a guy to self-promote. I hated promotion, marketing. I just was like, no, I'm just going to do a good product. And that worked great for me because the publisher did all the marketing, you know, and it was a good product and it was at the right time, and they did well. So time went on. Well, in the 2000s, when the internet thing starts going, at that point, I actually had an opportunity to pursue a band in a real way. We had everything going for us. And so again, the whole instructional thing, you know, I put that on the back burner, and I really did nothing with it. I mean, yeah, I did the fretboard mastery book, and I was writing for Guitar One magazine, but those were like, that was again part-time, that was backseat. Early 2000s, I was producing in a recording studio mostly. And then in the later 2000s, you know, the band, I had an online company. So I did what most musicians do. I straddled. I did lots of different things. But my main focus was the band. And the thing that I did not do at all was, you know, try to put together some kind of online curriculum. Well, you know, that was a good long while. And the band, of course, unfortunately, even though we had everything, we had all the connections, we had music, people liked it, blah, blah, blah. It was always one thing that was just bad timing. The wrong person, and then by the time the right person's there, that opportunity passed, look for another, something would fall apart. A whole lot of things have to happen, you know, to make it work, and they have to happen at the right time. And by the time we got everything to happen at the right time, the live industry collapsed basically underneath us. And at that point, you know, I went into a completely different direction. Some of you, and this kind of figures into where the Music Academy is now. But I went more on a spiritual kind of quest, and started studying and reading a lot, and practicing a lot of different things, which I'm not going to get into here. But my point is, and at that time, I even was a music director at a church for a while, playing all that sort of stuff. composing stuff. And, uh, then finally I'm coming around in this decade to let's bring it together. So what the Music Academy really is now is I've taken these core courses that I've done, so many of them, but I've integrated them into a curriculum that uses them. But the problem with a lot of these courses is that they by themselves aren't enough. We need a lot of repetition and a lot of wider application to really get this stuff down. I always thought when we would, like metal rhythm guitar, metal lead guitar methods, I always thought that these things would be used by people who were in bands and playing, learning lots of songs. And sure, they progress, but they progress very quickly. They're pretty ambitious. And if you approach this stuff and you don't have enough extra application, you hit a brick wall because you can't improve that fast. And fast enough to just say, okay, learn what's in chapter 2. Okay, I can play what's in chapter 2. Now I'm ready for chapter 3. You need more application. So that's what the curriculum does. And that's what I'm pretty happy about. And the reason that I went into all this about my goals, the physical, and also this idea goal, which I think is the ultimate, is because that really informs my perspective. I always thought we're musicians, we're playing music, and today I see a lot of players that are stuck in the mechanics of playing. They're looking at the patterns and they're playing from the patterns, and that can work, but it doesn't really set you free as a musician. The best ideas, the inspired ideas, don't come from a pattern. They come from the sound, in my experience. And so I'm developing a course right now that is focused on, I call it the fretboard mapping system. And so I want to show just a little bit about it. It's not up yet on the Academy, but it will be soon. Before I can put the beginning stages up, I won't put it up as a solid thing because it would take me half a year probably, because it's that big. But what I can do is if I map out and I have the materials and I have a good solid outline that I'm sold on, which I'm real close to having, then I can put it out and roll out the beginning parts of it, a chunk of it, maybe a third or a quarter of it, get people into it, and then I can just keep adding, to complete it. But basically, what I want to say is that the connection is difficult for guitarists. This is one of the reasons why I really want to get this course out. We start playing in its patterns, and the beginner looks at the fretboard through the patterns. And at some point, the ear starts to develop a bit. It has to, as you play and you hear what you play. Eventually, people sort of start to remember, oh, I know what this... I know what that lick's going to sound like just because I played it 1,000 times and I've heard it and I know what's going to come out. But they don't know the whole fretboard. They don't know when the idea occurs, what the corresponding place is on the neck to be able to make that work. And usually they're stuck in box 1 as far as what they're actually familiar with. And then along comes, some tidbit of information, hey, learn the cage system. And now you can, you play all these, E chords and on the neck. And you think, oh, I'm going to learn the whole neck. Great. And then you learn that and you realize, wait a minute, that's kind of cool, but it's completely irrelevant because I don't actually play these chords. No song is going to require that. Or the G form, are you kidding? Who's going to do that in a song? We use the chord shapes that are convenient, and you only get good at what you practice. So if you're only practicing the parts on the neck with the chord shapes, you never weld the whole thing together. And that's what the fretboard mapping system is about. It's an application system that walks you through step by step with actual backing tracks through a series, So I'll just give you a little example the very first example. It's real simple. But we take E, and of course we never have situation, where you're, well, okay, should I say never? Never say never, because maybe sometimes you will. Generally speaking, we don't have a situation where we're just playing one chord all the time. Usually we're playing over progressions. Not entirely true, because sometimes I'll play over a drone, but that's kind of an unusual situation. So usually it's progressions when you're playing a melody or a solo. And I start with just 2 chord progressions. You see, that's the problem with the cage system. Well, it's great, but it doesn't really help when it comes to learning how to apply your knowledge of the fretboard to real progressions that are changing. What you need is to learn how those progressions look at different points on the fretboard, where the triad shapes lie, learn the voicings of those triad shapes, and then as you play through them, as you move through them, you'll start to hear what we call voice leading. You'll hear different notes of the chord. See, what we normally listen to, you're playing a rhythm. You hear root movement, and these shapes. So you pay attention to the roots, where they are, and you might hear that root movement. But the problem, of course, is that doesn't really teach us anything about music, because we learn shapes, we're moving around chords. That's rhythm guitar. And then we have lead guitar, we have scales, we have patterns, we play licks. That's a completely different mindset and a different set of tools. And there's no relationship between the licks and the chords, because the chords are nothing but root movement with shapes attached. So you don't really understand how melody connects the two. And I don't care whether it's licks and they're fast, or whether it's slow and they're very melodic. It doesn't matter. It's all the same ideas. It's just a slightly different application. But that's the great weakness. And that's why we can't get the ideas of our head to the guitar. So this approach starts like this. I take a backing track and I just play a chord. It's an E and then a D. And then I do another E in another place and keep going. There's a D. So what I just kind of demonstrated there very loosely is, first you just play the chords so you can move in one direction or another. Now this, of course, we all know the E and the D. I presume everybody's at least with me on that. But a lot of people don't realize that from this D, where's the nearest E going that way? Well, it's this one. Now I'm only on strings 2, 3, 4, and then D. As you do that, you start hearing voice leading. You start hearing how this D falls, even though the chord from D to E rises, the melody falls. Your ear starts picking up on these. Then we look at, the strings 1, 2, 3. And you hear the same voice leadings, Then we start to decorate. So if I take an E and I play the notes of the D over the E, those are suspensions. Now I can start decorating and create a melodic impact, even though I'm really coming from the perspective, I'm really just playing the chords, I'm, maybe instead of E, D, maybe I do E. Now I can arpeggiate to be a decoration. I could add open strings. And as you decorate a chord, you are finally slowing down enough. See, this is the direction that nobody takes on electric guitar, because we're playing fast. Well, if you play fast, that's great, but you have to play out of predetermined licks for the most part, So that's a long road to be able to get there. And then we're coming from the perspective of you're playing a lot of notes. Well, how do I find the notes that are going to be strong and make my lick purposeful and melodic? Well, those are the chord tones. So we're always trying to see the chord tone under the lick, and it's very difficult. But if we start with this procedure, I'm starting with the chords, moving in the opposite direction from chords to melody, which just naturally allows you the strength to be able to see the chord because you've played the chord. And then you go off the chord. Now I know when I'm going off the chord, instead of being off the chord and then trying to get on the chord. So this direction is, then we do minor, we do, all of the different, so you see E, D, E, D, E, D, E. Once you understand the interconnection like that, there's a natural ability to play in a purposeful way. This is what makes everything sound really strong. Starts to connect your ear to the fretboard, and the more your ear gets connected, the more clear everything becomes. So I'm going to be deploying this. Of course, this was a 2-chord pattern. Then we'll do 3 chords. Then, you know what I mean? We just kind of keep building it up. But if I throw, if I throw a 4-chord structure at you and say, play melodically over this, you're going to get lost. But you can do 2 chords. And after you do 2, then you can do 3. And after you do 3, then you can do 4. And if you can do the triad, 3 strings at a time, well, you can do single notes because they're inside the triad. And this is the key to playing melodically or playing licks purposefully. It's being able to see the chord. So because we've gone from chord to note decoration and then finally to single notes, you'll see that single note as belonging to the chord and underneath. So this is I think a really effective way of being able to learn how to do this. And of course, it's improvisational because all these backing tracks are allowing you to do that very, very slowly. So that I am pretty excited about. I think this is going to be a great course, and I think it's going to help a whole lot of people kind of take the licks and the chords and sort of finally understand how they integrate. And I guess that's what I wanted to say about it. I want to say this. I see a comment about Fretboard Mastery, the Fretboard Mastery book. Fretboard Mastery is a kind of almost like a scholarly presentation of what I'm doing here in this fretboard mapping system. The difference is the fretboard mapping system is a very gradual application to develop those skills. What I did in Fretboard Mastery is there's application, of course, but it's complex. I tried to put the whole ball of wax into this one book. And the problem is ear training is something that develops over time. And so, it's a music theory book and it's an ear training book because music theory and ear training have to be together. If you don't develop them together, you're wasting your time. If you try to learn music theory without the ear training piece, it's useless. Okay. So I put ear training up front, and the problem is part 1, ear training, goes pretty quick through this stuff, and it's not enough application for most people to get to the end of part 1 and say, you know what, I have a real solid, I'm good at this. So it's something that they have to keep doing and doing for years, and then they can kind of progress and assimilate. And I structured that book to be, kind of categories. That's kind of an academic structure, and academic structure works great for academic things, but music really isn't an academic thing. It's a practice thing. If you're going to learn something that's academic in music, you have to literally apply it and own it. When you own it and really get it inside, then it's no longer academic. Now it's real. So and I've seen this mistake made as people try to write instructional books, because people send me stuff from time to time, and I've seen a lot of stuff like this where somebody will write a book and they'll say, hey, let's, here's how to read music, blah, 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 done. Here's how keys work and cycle of fifths, and here's your music theory, done. Here's your chords, and here's your seventh chords, and they do a little chord encyclopedia, done. Here's a couple of progressions. That's not how it works. That's why my books were successful, is because I didn't follow that kind of academic approach. What I did was I took each element of music, left hand chording, fretting, all that kind of stuff, string bending, well, all those techniques, that's one area. Then rhythmic ability, let's understand it, let's get it in the body. Let's tie those together. A knowledge piece, how does music theory work? And an ear training piece with it. Let's tie that together. Let's pull all that together and learn it at a simple level. And then the next chapter, let's expand that level and apply it. Let's expand. So each thread is increasing at every step along the way. You learn all of it together. And that's what's happening at the Music Academy. I'm pulling all this together, going through there's 120 songs now in the application, on top of all the musical studies that are in metal rhythm guitar and total rock guitar. And it's not just like I'm saying, hey, it's time to play this song. What I'm saying is, it's time to play this song because the song uses the techniques. And as we're learning this song, let's learn about the musical structures that are in this song, how they look on the fretboard, and how they sound. When you understand how they sound and you train your ear to hear that leap or that melodic structure, and you understand and you name it, so there's the music theory piece. You understand what it is in the abstract, you understand what it looks like on the fretboard and what it sounds like. What happens is kind of amazing, because what you start to see is, instead of this fretboard looking like a jungle, it's complex, it's confusing. Should I learn it here? Should I play this lick this way, or should I play it that way? And what's the difference? And what's the right way and the better way? And then, you see all this, and it's such a mess. It's such an entangled mess. Nobody gets it. The fretboard is not impenetrable, okay? It follows a logic. It's a very complex logic when you approach it from the wrong direction. And the wrong direction is the beginner direction, the physical direction, which is put your fingers here, do this. That's the fast route to be able to make the sounds, yes. But it's the long route to be able to understand what it is you're doing. So, yeah, you need that at first. But after a while, we have to understand what the musical structures are. And here's the beauty. The musical structures always sound the same. And when you learn what they are and what they sound like and what they are in the abstract, and can identify them, then you say, oh, that's showing up on the guitar in 4 different ways, 4 different shapes. And those 4 different shapes are equivalents. They're all the same thing. And all of a sudden, when you start seeing it like that, everything lines up and everything falls into place. And you can connect what you hear to the fretboard everywhere. And so I feel like that is a huge missing link for guitarists, almost universally. And I feel like we're gonna fix that here. And I'm gonna give you guys a process to tie it together in a really cool way. So I think I've talked about half an hour here, rattled on. Let's talk about what you guys want to talk about. Look at some questions here. Good morning. That one I can answer. Good morning. Let's see what Norway. Awesome. People coming in from Europe. I was hoping that some of you guys over there would be able to join me if I did it in the morning, and happy to see that. Athens, couple here, shred guitar. Please, another t-shirt. That's a good idea. Now, I kind of sucked it up, and finally, you know what, this marketing thing, t-shirt's part of marketing, It's important, you know. You create a vibe. I've got a cool logo thanks to, you know, the publisher so many years ago, um, and it creates a vibe because inspiration is important. It's important to be inspired by the music that we play, but when you surround yourself with inspiration, whether it's, you know, you have a studio or you have guitars that are inspiring to you, that helps. That helps you stay on track. And if you get a band T-shirt or a tour shirt or something, well, that's inspiring too. That's the vibe that you can stay attached to. I should do that. I have finally sucked it up and got my marketing on track. You know, the one thing I could never do, because my mind, I go deep into the content. I'm always thinking of structuring the content. To market, you have to come out and look at it like a brand new person who doesn't know anything about it and say, what, you know, what's the top level? You know, what am I going to get from this? And I can tell you, well, I can get you to be a musician and get you to know everything you want to know, but that's not good marketing, you know? And so finally I've practiced it a little. I guess for a long time it was because I had a bad taste in my mouth about marketing, like a lot of people do. You know why? Because I see marketing out there in the world and I see crap products marketed well. You buy it and then you're very dissatisfied. And I see that on YouTube. I see that with lots of guitar methods. They promise the sun, the moon, and the stars, and they show you how to connect some chords in the cage system. And it's like, okay, that didn't solve it. Or they say, I'm going to let you're going to roam the fretboard. You're going to be unlimited. What are they going to show you? They're going to show you 5 pentatonic boxes. And you noodle around with them for a while and you realize, I can't really use this. This doesn't work. It just sounds like dribble. What am I missing? Well, it's because they overpromised and underdelivered. So at the same time, though, that's my negativity of marketing. At the same time, though, good marketing for a good product is essential because otherwise you'll never learn about it. So I've been kicking myself to figure it out, and I finally feel like I'm getting there. And this outreach here, this live stream, this is part of me trying to step up and be real and transparent, and you know, kind of let you know where I am, what I'm doing, and you know, I'll be doing more of these from time to time. I'm not going to do a lot, but I'll do them from time to time, and I'll be playing more stuff. Sure, as we get going, as I play more. I'm just starting to play again. I hadn't played for about 1.5 years, actually. So it takes a while to get things back. Good night from China. Yeah, I bet it's late there. Okay, let's see what we got for questions. Fred, what's your thoughts on Como thingy? From a teacher's perspective, to recognize early signs that a student will be a freaking miming mofo. Well, I don't know what that term GUACOMO. I'm not familiar with that. Is there signs that a student is like really on it? Well, of course. Yeah, I've taught a few people that at various levels that had it. You know, what are the things that separate? I think that there's a pairing of two things. There's the drive and the inspiration on the one hand, paired with some natural level of getting it and putting 2 and 2 together. You know, like some people are a little bit more tuned into the ear. A lot of times when I'm teaching, you know, what I'm doing is I'm being a surrogate ear. I'm directing people's attention to the thing they're not paying attention to, the thing they're not hearing. And as soon as they focus on that thing, they fix it and it gets better. And then, so we're really developing the ear to discern, to know where to look and what to listen for. Some people start out with a more developed ear. Some people start out with a less developed ear. So if somebody's got a more developed ear, I think when it comes to the physicality of playing, I think that people are actually very close. I don't think there's as much. Now there is some variation. Some people will develop faster. Some people will struggle more. Some people have a more subtle control. Some people are more blocky, you know, and they have to learn how to get the nuance and relax. But everyone is capable. I guess what I'm saying is the physical thing. From talent to less talent, I feel like that's a relatively small piece of the puzzle. What's more important is the ability to focus deeply and ingrain things into muscle memory, and have enough discipline to do it, and also not to overshoot. Most people, and I see it in myself too, especially when I was younger, most of us want to be better than we are. Let's face it, you know, that's why we're applying ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. But to the extent that you don't accept where you are, that's a problem. Because what it means is that people will spend 80% of their time playing faster than they can really play, screwing up over and over and over again. How often do they actually slow down and really nail it and get clear about it and get it in their mind and their nervous system so that they can run through it, flow through it correctly? 20% of the time, maybe. What happens when you're doing 80-20 like that? You create a technique that is unreliable. You put mistakes into your muscle memory. It's a very slow route. It's counterintuitive. The harder we push, the more it sets us back to some degree when you're pushing too hard. On the other hand, what we should do is spend about 20% pushing, and most of our time in the area where we can actually get it done well and right. Inversions are a gold mine, says Jack. Yeah, that's going back to what I was playing, showing all the different shapes, but applying them as the chords move. That's what teaches you the fretboard, and that's what teaches you how to play melodic. And here's the cool thing. Once you start with chords and decorate the chords, you immediately understand the difference between the chord solid notes and the suspensions that are off notes, and it will mold your decorations around the chord tones, which is to say that you will be playing purposefully and melodically. That's what makes a melody sound strong. And here's the cool thing. After you can do that and your melody sounds strong, what you'll actually have is the ability to weave that into your faster lines. Because once you see, you know, okay, there's the suspension and there's my target note and this is my decoration around it, I can just decorate more. I can do a faster decoration. I can run up and down the scale, but I can still see the chord and I can still end in the right place. So that is the beauty of this new thing. Okay, let's see. Let me go down to here. Luxembourg, Paul, great to see you doing this. Just wondering, do you still own or use the guitars that were on the covers of those books? Okay, the guitar that was on the cover of the original heavy metal rhythm and lead methods, that red star-shaped guitar, I never even saw the thing. You know, I gave the manuscript to the publisher. The publisher had an art director who, you know, said, this is the one I'm going to use, and he did it. So I have no idea. I did at one point buy a kind of a star guitar shape, because that was, you know, the late 80s, and who doesn't want a red star-shaped guitar? I mean, come on. So anyway, the Speed Mechanics guitar was a Kramer. That was not my guitar either. I did own a Kramer at one point, and I liked that guitar, but it wasn't the red one. The guitars that I actually played on Speed Mechanics is this guy. Let's see, Jackson Soloist with a Kahler vibrato, and it now has a Sustainiac sustainer in it. It did not have that sustainer in it when I did Speed Mechanics. and I did the paint job. Just it was brown, and it needed a fret job after so many years, and so it was in its case for like 5-6 years. I never played it. Finally, I sucked it up and you know, decided to put it back together, and I just took some spray paint to it just to do something different, for the hell of it. But it's a great sounding guitar. I got a Seymour Duncan. I think it's a Duncan distortion. It's either a distortion or a custom. I think it's distortion. It's subtle, but the guitars do sound different, and that Duncan gives a kind of a creaminess to the sound, but it's also kind of organic. Like what I notice, like those Fishman pickups, and I have some of those in a Schecter over here. The Fishman pickups are really nice because they're so quiet, especially trying to record an environment with lights that create RF noise. You get buzz and hum in most pickups, and the Fishmans are silent, but they also have a monotone quality to them. Like the tone, no matter how you hit the strings, it's always the same, and I can't stand that aspect of it. Now that might work well. I mean, I hear a lot of that in mixes, you know, more in the last decade or so, where each thing in the mix really behaves and stays in its own place very consistently. It used to be that in mixes, you know, basically everything jumped more, but then in the final mastering stage, we sort of tamed it down so that everything sort of behaved. But you had the interplay of the different instruments. You know, if a guitar had a harshness to it, it didn't sound harsh in the final mix, but that harshness would poke out, you know, and then it would hide better, you know, so you had more of that. And I have more of that, like with stuff like this, I hit the string differently and the tone changes more. So I really like that. So anyway, there's that one. And this is the guitar that I played the lead method on. I scalloped it since, because, you know, it was the late 80s and Yngwie was playing on scalloped necks. I thought, well, I don't really have the money to go buy another guitar, but I got a file and I have a maple neck, so let's do it. So I got the file out and just kind of went at it. And you can see, so it's weird because when you play on it, you're on the strings, you don't touch the fretboard ever. But this guitar has a Duncan Custom in it, and it's this kind of hermaphrodite guitar because they took a Les Paul style body shape. It's pretty light too. It's maple. I don't know maybe what the body is. Maybe it's maple, maybe it's ash. I don't know. The neck obviously is maple, and it's got the Strat kind of bar and it's got a 5-position switch, and it's got this well, this obviously is Tele modeled, and then it's got the, you know, the Strat pickup configuration but with a humbucker and the Tele look on top. It was made by a company called St. Blues, which is out of business. It's a nice light guitar, but this thing also always really sounded good. And you know, guitars, everybody gets so, I think it's so carried away, you know, oh, my guitar's got this and it's got this wood, and it's like, well, you know, it's tough to say this is better than that. You can't, because it depends on what you're going into, you know. This guitar sounds great going into, you know, an overdrive pedal into a Marshall stack. So there's that. All right, let's see here. Let me get some more questions. Greetings from Finland. Total picking control is awesome. I've been playing for over 20 years and TPC has improved my technique tremendously. Awesome. I'm really happy to hear that, because I knew that it would. And as I played the stuff, I think I even wrote that in the beginning of the book. I noticed that it helped my playing. And of course, my playing is like this over the years because I'll play a lot and I can get to the point where I can do whatever I want, and it's instant and it's effortless. And then I won't play for a while. So then I get a book like I can run through stuff like that, and it's like, oh, I'm recording all this stuff, and before I know it, I'm able to play again. But you're right, it does, and I'm happy to hear that it's working for you, because that just reinforces that to me that it is on the right track. Love your technique, speed, lead mechanics, sweep picking, but how building good harmonic? Not sure I'm understanding what you mean. Harmonics, or do you mean like harmony, like how the harmonic aspect of music works? If you're wanting more musicality in it, get total picking control, because it is like the other guy says here, it is a technique book, progressive, but we can kill, the phrase here is kill two birds with one stone. It's kind of an odd phrase, but what it means is you do one thing and you get two benefits, or sometimes we call it double dipping. So that's what total picking control really is. On the one hand, it's a technique builder, but the musicality of each example is something that I also go into a fair amount. Now, it's not a thorough harmonic analysis of every song. There are spots where I go into those things, though, where it's particularly important to the song, or where the song kind of lends itself to that. And you learn through those things how to use the techniques effectively and musically. So it really, that's the part of the book that is kind of, it's kind of secret. You know what I mean? Like, it's there and you're going to learn it, but it's not trumpeted like, oh, this is what this book's about. It's something I kind of slipped in. Let's see. Where else? What gauge, string gauge, and brand do you recommend as a sweet spot? Strings, Doroteo. Okay. I generally use 9 gauge. And in standard tuning, 9 gauge is, playable, but pretty tight. I actually prefer 9 gauge in slack down a half step. That has the right, for me, the right feel of, it makes vibrato just kind of nice and effortless and smooth. Of course, with the scalloped neck guitar, 9s in standard tuning will do that, because it's scalloped, but most of the time. So 9 gauge is cool. The problem, of course, is depending on your tuning. Go down a whole step, it's getting a little wobbly. You can play. I don't bother restringing my guitars, and I play in low tunings sometimes. I'll do, drop C, drop D down a whole step, in other words, and play on 9 gauge. And you can do it if you're careful. If you know how to hold the pick lightly, you just can't overpower the strings because they flap so much more and they're so loose. You have to have a loose technique to it to adapt to it. Alternatively, you could put on 10s if you're going to do down a whole step. That would work. I remember back in the day, in the 80s, late 80s, and I was teaching a lot. And I remember somebody had, came in with 8 gauge strings, and they're so thin. In standard tuning, 8 gauge is super bendy, flexible, which is kind of nice. It allows a lot of vibrato and tension bending control and soaring kind of bends. It's pretty easy to do because you don't have to like really, apply your strength and just, put it all behind you. On the other hand, though, it also sounded very plinky and just very thin, and the sustain's not as good. And so I never felt like it was appropriate. I always felt like, look, if I'm in standard tuning, nines are close enough, I'll suck it up and push hard. And if you're doing a performance, you've got that extra, you know, the thing that some people experience on performance when they're on stage of nervousness is really excitement viewed through the negative lens of what if I screw up? But when you get rid of the negative lens and you look at it comfortably, it's actually the same experience emotionally, I think, as excitement. And when you're in the moment and you're present and you have that excitement gives you, it's adrenaline. It gives you more strength, which is one of the reasons why it's so difficult to stay relaxed when you play live, is because you tend to have more adrenaline. So it feels like suddenly you're on stage and you're playing, and it doesn't seem like you're picking any harder than you'd normally pick, but you have unconsciously gripped the pick twice as tight. You're digging in the strings much more, and then the strings are fighting against you, and then you're pushing hard, everything gets rigid, and then you're on this downward spiral. The key, of course, is being able to relax. Anyway, that's the story about strings. What's this question? No Telecasters there. Well, I have a Chinese knockoff Telecaster that actually sounded pretty good. I haven't played it for a long time because I moved to the desert where the humidity is super low, and Chinese guitar, the woods, this thing's about 15 years old, and it neck bowed, and I haven't made the time to actually pull out a truss rod and see if I can fix it. Maybe I can. I don't know. That's one of the problems. At least it was. I don't know if I've got some other newer Chinese guitars here, which are actually pretty good. But then again, you know, who knows if their necks are gonna stay straight for another year. I don't know. That the actual guitars you used, you still have. What method did you do? What method did you do is the best of your career? Oh, total picking control, hands down. There's more material in that book than everything else that I did put together, I think. And you know, it's just head and shoulders above everything else. Your books inspired me to start playing guitar in 2003. Thank you very much. By the way, solos in thrash and speed metal are masterpieces. Oh yeah, that, and they ended up re-releasing that as Thrash Guitar Method, put a different cover on it. Same songs though, it's the same method. They just changed the cover. You are very welcome. I'm glad that it helped you. And yeah, that was fun to do. That we recorded that in the early 90s. And a friend of mine, Tony Burton, and I, yeah, that story of that was he wanted to do this thrash guitar method, and he had come up with some riffs and some songs, and so I ended up writing the rest of the method to put a method around those songs. The songs were his as far as the core of them, but then we got together and we sort of I helped arrange them, you know, contribute a little bit, but mostly those songs, those riffs were his. And then we traded some solos back and forth when all the solos were improvised. Oh, how to make artificial flageolets, Flajolets. I'm sorry, I don't know that word. Let me see here. Flageolets. Tender beans that are pale green and kidney shaped. Okay, I think we got a little bit of apparently we have a language barrier here. I don't know what that's referring to. Let's keep going. When should I start incorporating total picking control into my practice routine? I'm halfway through Metal Rhythm Guitar 1. Halfway through Rhythm Guitar 1. Well, I'll tell you this. It depends on how well you're doing the material in Metal Rhythm Guitar 1. There you can come in and it's not always what you're playing. It's less about what you're playing and more about how well you're doing it. Okay. So people will go through the rhythm guitar method. They'll play the notes. Oh, I've been through it. And then they'll sometimes realize years later, well, I didn't really do it well. And there's a whole nother level of higher based skills in terms of perfecting timing and precision. And then they'll come back and do it again to a higher level. Well, I set up total picking control to do that, to recognize, to have people recognize that you're at a level, you want to keep going up and up and up. And you can come back through the same material and go up, provided you don't beat it to death. If you beat your songs to death, then they're going to not really, you can't come back to them unless you let them sit for a long time, because once you beat it to death, you're no longer conscious of what you're doing. You're just doing it all by rote. You're doing it all by automatic pilot. It's in muscle memory. And when you put it in muscle memory, that's good. But what we're really doing as we improve our technique is you build a muscle memory, and then you break the muscle memory and turn it into more control of two different muscle memories. And you break that again, and you break each one of those. And eventually you have all the fundamentals and you have total control. So I would say this, to come back to your question. It depends. If you're really good, you finished chapter 3 and you feel like, okay, everything's really working quite well. If you start total picking control now, you will find that you're good for the first probably 2 lessons. And then you're going to hit a wall, because the total picking control curve goes up pretty quick from where you are. Now, that's not to say that you can't begin it. As long as you begin it with this idea of, well, most of it is way more advanced. So what I'll need to do is let's take that and let's recognize that it's a supplement. So in other words, your main task is still the rhythm guitar method, and ideally application to lots of songs that are at that level of wherever you are. You're learning more songs like that you would get out of, for example, the Music Academy, the Heavy Rhythm Guitar Mastery course. That'll give you all that supplemental material. So you're doing all that, and then you supplement a little bit of total picking control. And you take it and you apply it as you can. And you're very patient about that application. If you go into total picking control thinking, okay, I'm trying to move forward and this is my main thing, it's going to be disappointing to you, because you're going to run out of steam because the curve uphill is going to be a little too long. So the answer is you can start it with that caveat that you're going to I'm going to be real patient with it. If you do it that way, it is going to add a lot of insight, and it's going to help you do the others better, because there are many, many advanced concepts in total picking control that you'll be able to kind of start to assimilate again slowly. And that's going to give you a broader, bigger perspective about what you're doing and how you're doing it. So it can be a very good thing. Any updates on the Temu Les Paul? It's on my list. I've got a third one on the way, and so I had to get a white one because I got a black one, so I had to get a white one too. You gotta, just the same way on my entryway. I've got my Excalibur sword, and then I've got the evil sword, the 2 pairs. So it's my yin yang thing. So I have to have. So anyway, the white one's on its way. When the white one comes, I have it on my list this next week that I need to dig in and do it. One of the reasons that it's kind of burdensome for me to do things like that is because pulling out the guitars and doing all the treatments is one thing, but then to also say, okay, I got to film all this crap. That makes it more daunting. So that's kind of why I put it off. But I'm in process. Okay, awesome practicing insights. Oh, glad you like that. Excellent. Troy, would you put this live chat in a post? I couldn't make it from the beginning. So this is the second live stream I've done on YouTube, and I'm still kind of learning. You know, you go in to do a live stream and you have all these controls and you don't necessarily, I don't know what they mean. So I'm kind of trying to figure it out, but I did click the button that said live stream is, the live stream chat should be included. At least that's what I understood it to mean. So when I'm done and I look at this, if it's in there, then great. I interpreted the direction correctly. And if it isn't, then I don't know what it means, but hopefully it'll be there. SilverOne says, please talk about methods to mute strings when soloing. Wow, this is, gosh, probably one of the biggest topics to playing well. And I don't hear much about it, you know. I mean, I talk about it in a lot when in the curriculum in Music Academy, because when I'm going through all these song videos and I'm showing you how to play all these different songs, you know, as soon as it comes up, it's like, okay, watch out for, you're going to probably set this string off. You've got to figure out how to stop it. And here's how I do it. It's a case-by-case basis. And the thing is, when a player has good string damping technique, what happens is it becomes automatic, and they don't even realize they're doing it. You know, they think about what they're doing. They don't think about the damping. It's just how they play. And so, because I've been involved, of course, in teaching, though, and I still do a little one-on-one teaching, you know, I'm kind of attuned to that, to see, oh, these are common mistakes. So then I'll point them out. And you just have to do it on a case-by-case basis. Mostly, you know, I think, well, basically, it's in the position, you know. So when I go to play a note, well, let me get my. So as I'm picking, you know, extra strings, kind of like a funk. If you played a, I got a lot of delay on that. Hope you can hear what I'm doing. But anyway, as I play single notes, and this is something that Total Picking Control really gets into, because as we build up and go through the different styles, we hit these different chucking and you know, like funky kind of stuff sometimes, and metal applications and soloing and everything else. We hit lots of that, and it boils down to the right angles. So, you know, in a blues kind of position like this, this finger is on its side just enough to damp. The top of the finger touches string 4. Strings 1 and 2 are damped here underneath. And then, you know, you can, like, if I played an open C5, it's a 4th, 5th string and 3rd string. So, you know, I'm damping the underside of the 4th string, the underside here. My first finger is here to damp. Now, that's not to say that you don't also want picking precision to be able to pick the string you want. You do, but sometimes you want to pick additional strings. It makes it sound more aggressive and fatter, and you can play with more abandon then. You know, you don't have to feel like you're being super precise. That kind of technique bugs the hell out of me. It just watch somebody play like that. There's no natural expression or flow. It's like this, you know. So anyway, critical technique. I can't really go into all the details because there's 1,000 of them. Okay, we need to wrap up here, but let me grab. Thanks for advice. Oh, the question repeated: how to make artificial harmonic? Well, you know, that's something. Different people can do it differently. Let's put it this way. Any harmonic is a matter of cutting a string into equal parts. And so that's what's happening is when you fret a note, what's happening is the string rings from that fret to the bridge. Obviously, the shorter the string, the higher the pitch, which is why when you go this way, the note goes up. So if you're, let's say you're here on, 15th fret, if I were to pick in the middle 50% of the way, there it is, I get an octave because I cut the string in half. And the shorter, the more lengths you cut it into, the higher the pitch. And so the only point is that you need to have something touching the string as you pick. Now, what I do is I lean my pick a little bit and make the side of my thumb do it. Now, you could do it with a different part. You could do it with the end of your finger, I mean, there's no rule there. It's a question of what you want to, how you want to do it. As long as you get the job done and you can have control over it, that's what matters. So you choke up on the pick a little, and you can get that. You can get full harmonics, you can get semi-harmonics, depending on how hard you're touching the string. If you touch the string fully, you're going to get a full harmonic, provided that you're over a node. And that's the difficulty of it, of course, is that depending on what fret you're at, those nodes move. And you just get used to it, I guess. If you're in a certain key, like where from your position, where it's likely to create the harmonic. So it's a trial and error thing. Awesome insights. Thanks for advice. Let's see here. In the 80s scene, who were your favorite guitarists or the ones you liked listening to? Well, early 80s, it was still Van Halen. Everything he did was magic. Randy Rhoads was awesome. And then Ozzy's, follow-up guitar players, Jakey Lee, liked his stuff a lot. Pretty much all of the great solos that were happening through the 80s were pretty inspiring to me. I didn't get into Yngwie until, I don't know, maybe 85. Well, I don't remember. When did Rising Force come out? Maybe it was pretty quick after it came out. And I was already playing classical music at that time. Got into that after, Randy Rhoads. But I preferred the way Randy Rhoads applied the classical ideas in metal. It was more about metal with the purposefulness of classical music, which I found to be really appealing. What Yngwie did was he said, okay, here's what's possible. I never heard a blazingly fast 3-note per string, perfectly executed run before he came on board. It's like, oh, you can do that too. That's cool. So I started doing that. I covered Far Beyond the Sun in a band, cover band that at the time, which was fun. But so I learned some of his stuff, but I also never really liked listening to him because I felt like he was too narrow and everything sounded the same. I could take one song, and after one song, I was like, okay, I'm pretty bored. As far as listening, I saw him perform once, and he was a very good performer. And of course, he'll hold your attention live because of all the antics that he's doing and everything that he's playing. And what I liked about him, of course, is the freedom that everything looked completely effortless. And so I aspired to that. But musically speaking, I never found an inspiration in him, really. So anyway, that's that. I'll tell you what, we do 2 more questions. Let's see here. The Academy is a much larger structured curriculum with the books as a base. Yeah, I think you might be answering somebody else. Oh, yeah. Oh, I see, Kevin. You're answering. Yeah, absolutely. You are correct. And Kevin is my assistant admin at the Academy. So he'll be answering a lot of questions, and that's, appreciate that, Kevin. Let's see. Let me back up and let's see if I had a couple couple other questions because I just committed to 2 more. So, okay. Charvel Master says, I literally bought all your books for my guitar teacher, bought all your books for my guitar teacher and told him it was the method I wanted to learn from. He said it's the method he's going to use from now on with metal hard rock students. Cool. Yeah, those books are still in print. And that's a real testament, I think, to the fact that they work because, you know, music, you know, has changed, superficially at least. But the fundamentals haven't changed and the learning techniques haven't changed. And they still work, you know. I've heard that criticism that they are, well, they were updated in the mid 90s. So in other words, originally I wrote heavy metal rhythm guitar in 1985, came out in 86. And then I wrote heavy metal lead guitar in 86. It came out in 86 and 87, kind of working on them at the same time-ish, but finished rhythm first. And then in the 90s, we redid them. Well, I rewrote the rhythm guitar method. It went from being a whole bunch of riffs with one song at the end of volume 2 to following the lead approach, which was each chapter would have its own musical study, its own song, which allowed me in the 90s to do different styles and kind of cover the whole range of rock and metal. So that book got rewritten pretty much entirely. And the lead guitar method, however, did not. The lead guitar method, I just edited. I didn't change anything. None of the licks, none of the solos. In the 90s, it was still the same stuff because they were good and they work. And lead guitar playing didn't really change that much. Lead guitar playing still hasn't really changed that much, you know. The rhythm guitar, because the songs approaches have changed a bit. That's what's changed. So still, it's kind of dated. The rhythm guitar dated from the 90s. And, you know, I've heard the complaint or the criticism is, well, yeah, but, you know, that's not relevant to what's happening today. Yes, it is. It's totally relevant. And you'll see that in the Music Academy because we're doing all kinds of songs. We're doing songs. There's a couple even from the late 60s, but mostly 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, all right up to today. And you'll see that the presentation of music and the decorations of music have changed. The attitudes, the social purpose and the lyrics, the approach, the attitude, all that's changed. But fundamentally, the musical structures haven't changed, you know, and the techniques really haven't changed. It's all the same stuff. It's just a slightly different application. And that's one of the solutions, you know, in the Music Academy. All right, one more question. Yes, talk about methods to, we already did that one. Let's see here. Let me jump to the end. How to use legato technique from speed mechanics in routine. How to use legato? I use, well, it depends on where you are, I guess. I use technique to play music. So when I go and I need to play something and I'm having a little trouble, well, then I kind of have to, oh, why did that feel weird? Oh, this is what's going on. Let's roll through that and get that to work. How do you use it in a routine? Well, I think practice routine is something that you need to experiment with to see what works for you. I am not I think I used to be a very disciplined player. I would sit down and practice, but still it wasn't discipline. I don't think it was ever really discipline. I think it was the pull of my inspiration. I'd hear something and it was like, ooh, that's awesome. What is that? You know, I want to learn that. I want to see what it is that creates that spark. And you do that a couple hundred times, and you kind of get how to do all the things that inspire you, and then that kind of becomes your artistic voice. So I never really structured my approach. I learned a lot of music, and I always had the integration piece in my head. Like, I knew that if I didn't really understand what was happening in the music, that I didn't really own it. And so I'd learn a song and I would notice, I see a pattern here and I hear a pattern, and then I see the same pattern in this song and I see what it is. And then I learned, oh, that's one thing. And when you keep doing that, that's kind of how it all comes together. If you are developing technique, that's kind of an outside-in approach. Instead of, my approach would be, I'm learning music. The music happens to use legato technique. Oh, I better practice my legato technique. And then when I practice it, I want to expand it to say, I don't just want to play this legato line. I want to be able to control the fundamentals that are required to do that. Yes, so I can do it, but I want to expand it. And I want to be able to play that idea and improvise where I want to go with it. So that's how I would approach the things. And if that works for you, great. If that doesn't, if you want to say, okay, I need more discipline than that, I'm going, because some people are like, as soon as they allow themselves to follow their inspiration, it peters out and sort of becomes noodling. And if that's happening, then you have to say, oh, wait a minute, that's not working. Let me apply some discipline. And what's that look like? Well, it might be putting on a timer and say, okay, I'm going to play this material. I'm going to learn these legato lines and develop them and roll over them for 10 minutes. And then I'm going to work on this. And then I'm going to work on that, because, those are the areas that I want to hit. There's no right or wrong. It's just kind of, whatever you want to do. And we'll do this one last one, and then I got to roll. Flight of the Bumblebee is one of my favorite warm-ups. How did you put it together back in the day, from a violin or a piano book? I don't remember. Yeah, I pulled the music. It had to be violin. Yeah, I pulled the music. Gosh, I think that was, I was teaching at the Conservatory of Music. They had a library there. They had, a lot of the Paganini Caprices. I was learning that stuff at the time. And the Flight of the Bumblebee, Rimsky-Korsakov. Yeah, I pulled that. I think I probably have the sheet music here somewhere. And and then basically that version that was in the book, it's pretty fast. It's not super fast. I think it's 168, 16th notes. And then later I did more of a metal version that was much faster, which is, it's actually easier to play faster because it's got a little bit less, the pattern's a little bit more shifting and less string crossing. Still fast string crossing, but all right, guys, I think we'll wrap it up there. And I appreciate you guys all showing up and letting me talk about some of this stuff. Please, another t-shirt. I'm working on it. I gotta find some good ones. I like this shirt, but it's probably a blinding glare, though. Probably not the best thing to use on video. All right. Gosh. Okay. Here's a real good one. I gotta hit this one. What's an effective way to utilize a metronome with rhythm playing? Okay. Let's hit this, because people get this wrong, and I think it does a lot of damage. Stage one, you're learning how to play a song, no metronome. You've got to look at the motions. You have to be able to play the motions before you can put them in time. So you have to do that. You have to be very elastic with rhythm. So that's the first stage. Get it on your fingers. And at that point, you're just sort of playing a rhythm based on just kind of make it try to sound like it's sort of like the rhythm that you're hearing. And then after a while of that, you know, then you want to try, oh, where's pulse? Tap your foot. Oh, okay, now I understand where pulse fits into there. After you can do that, then you want to say, is my foot tapping actually even? Now's the time you turn on the metronome. The metronome clicks, you see, try to tap your pulse with that. Can you hold on to it? And here's the difference. If you turn on the metronome and that's your click, and you're always playing to that click, the metronome becomes your groove. You don't put groove in you. What you really need to do is tap your foot and express pulse in your body so that you feel that expressed pulse as you play. You do that, you have groove. Then you line that up with the metronome just to check yourself so that you're playing with that time. Otherwise, you never really develop groove. You're sort of relying on it outside yourself. And that's the problem. A lot of intermediate players, they've been playing for decades. They play with a band, the drummer supplies the groove, and they just kind of try to latch onto it. They're not having any groove in themselves. So that's the big area that you need to develop. And furthermore, if you're always using a metronome, it distracts you from other things. Like your focus can become very narrow when you focus intently on one aspect at a time. And we want that. The key, though, is that we don't want to be stuck on the one aspect we focus on. We want to be able to pull it out and listen. You know, be playing along and you want to listen to the drum. You want to listen to the bass. You want to listen to your guitar. You want to be able to direct your attention anywhere you want and hear with detail and clarity what you're doing. If you're always playing with a metronome, it's always kind of distracting you a little bit from maybe what your hands are doing. So, you know, bad idea to do that. Good idea to use it, to not use it, not use it, back and forth. Okay, I gotta go. Thank you guys. And I guess I'll try to get one of these done about once a month, although here we're at the end of May, June. It might not be till July that I hit the next one. Take it easy and check out, if you're not already there, I encourage you to check out the Music Academy. And in the next month, look for this deployment of this new course, fretboard mapping system. I think it's going to be freaking phenomenal, and I'm really excited about it. So take it easy. Have a good day and month. Bye-bye.